All right, hello wine drinking people. Time for more of what I've had to drink yesterday and finishing up an amazing year here, 2012. The folks from Chateau Palmer were just in town at the Edge, and what an incredible meal Aaron Brooks put out. Just one bit of criticism, just need to keep the pace moving a little quicker there. 4 courses, dinner course out at 10 o'clock, a little bit slow, but man, when I looked at the menu, I was really looking forward to sweetbreads, foie gras, and pork belly. The first 3 courses, man, outstanding stuff, Aaron. All the food was really good, but the dinner course, you know, we don't need that much time between courses. You know, when you're eating, drinking, you want to keep the food flowing, and just a little bit too much time between the courses there, but the food was outstanding once again at the Edge. And for all 12 of us that were there, I think we had 12 bottles of Chateau Palmer, so we had quite a big task in front of us. We started out with a little Poly-Jacquet March champagne, had nothing to do with Chateau Palmer, but the folks at Vinecraft brought us the Chateau Palmer, so we thought we'd give them a little plug here for this nice little small boutique champagne house, a 3rd generation now in charge, and they own 3 hectares of Pinot Noir Grand Cru and some Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier Premier Cru, and dealing with some growers also. But this is a really nice bottle of Brut champagne, little cocoa and spice in the bouquet, 5.8 grams of residual sugar there, and only the first pressing used, just like in most great houses. Apple and quince fruit, some white flowers, a good amount of those tiny bubbles on the palate with nice freshness and some of that cocoa and ginger showing through on the finish. Excellent juice. But we were here to showcase one of the greatest chateaus in Margaux, Chateau Palmer, which is still owned by the same 2 families since 1936, the Sichel and Mahler-Bast families, and these guys have really invested, you know, whatever it took to make Palmer one of the flagship houses of Margaux. And they just brought in 2004 a new CEO, Thomas Deroux, which, man, that was extra. I didn't know Thomas was going to be there. Also, Jean-Louis, the rep for the United States, I'd set this up with him. He's out of New York, but this guy is one of the top young guns in Bordeaux today. And he's been there, like I said, since the 2004 harvest, so we got to experience a few of his wines, a 2008 and 2005 Alter Ego to start. And these are the second wine of Chateau Palmer, but not really a second wine, like a different wine entirely. You know, the vineyards treated the same exact way as they, you know, treat the vines for Chateau Palmer, trying to get, you know, low yields, trying to produce the best possible fruit. And Chateau Palmer is unique because they have a lot of Merlot. About half the vineyards planted Merlot, half of it's a Cabernet Sauvignon, and a little bit of Cabernet Franc, which usually doesn't see the Alter Ego. But this 2008, a fantastic wine, offering up a nose of coffee, toffee, some lovely smoky notes to this as well, red currant and plumberry fruit, really elegant and fine wine on the tongue, which, you know, Chateau Palmer is as well. But the Alter Ego, a little more forward, a little more drinkable, but the 2005, a blockbuster vintage. I always say some of the best values coming out of Bordeaux are the second labels of great properties like this Alter Ego in a killer vintage like 2005. You know, this one was most excellent. One of the better Bordeaux or Margaux that I've had this year. Black plum and currant berry fruit, almost a sun-dried character. Very concentrated with some peppery notes and some sweet tobacco, spice, and earth. Big and rich on the palate. This wine opened up all evening long, very layered. You could keep this wine for several more years in your cellar. Just a beautiful bottle with lots of structure, fine tannins, really well built. And like I said, man, for a second wine, you could keep this wine possibly as long as some of the other great wines being made in Margaux today. Chateau Palmer 2004 and 2006 were next. And man, ever since I went to Bordeaux tasting the 2004s on premiere, I've had a love of this vintage, especially at the price. You know, although the 2004 Palmer is not cheap, $325. Still, when you look at, you know, Chateau Margaux and some other wines, relative value. Well, classic vintage for Bordeaux. A good amount of that gravelly, earthy note showing through in this wine. Some dark plum fruit as well. Notes of smoke and tobacco spice. Lovely structure in these 2004s. A classic vintage. Fairly drinkable, but that is Palmer. This wine still has got some legs to it and some nice minerality and coffee notes showing on the finish. Excellent juice. The 2006, markedly lighter, markedly more forward, a little less tannins in this wine, showing maybe a hint of a green herbal note to that, but lovely cherry and plum fruit here, soft and round on the tongue. A very elegant wine and showing beautifully today. Very drinkable. A little bit of that gravelly minerality on the finish also. The 96 and 95 Palmer were our last 2 wines, and, you know, this two vintages have been compared. I've been in numerous tastings showing 95s and 96 ever since their release. 95 was the first vintage that the press had to talk about because 91, 2, 93, 94, all not very good vintages in Bordeaux. Well, nothing to write home about, nothing you could really sell a lot of futures based on the scores of the critics, but 95 was, and 96 even better. And I think maybe 95 is starting to come into its own a little bit right now. This 95 vintage, still a little bit austere, but has wonderful structure, has nice tannins, and great freshness to it, great acidity, a nice backbone of structure to this wine, and lovely, little bit of black pepper spice on the nose, some dark plum and currant berry fruits. Starting to come out of its shell a little bit, but the 1996 much more forward and much more juicy in terms of the fruit here. Always has been, these two vintages when I've had them in the past. Lovely silky texture on this wine, and that gravelly minerality showing, some graphite notes showing on the finish of this 96. This wine still has got legs, also a great vintage, but just a little more to it in terms of fruit. Hey, it's not, we don't ever finish a Bordeaux dinner without some sweet wine. You know, they make some of the greatest white wine in Bordeaux, the best reds in the world, the most age-worthy anyways, and then the sweet wines of Bordeaux. And Chateau Palmer not affiliated with any sweet wine to my knowledge, so we had a little Laforet Paraguay to finish off the evening, the 2006. This is a vintage drinking beautifully right now, some lovely candied pineapple fruit, a little bit of that honey character starting to shine through. And let me tell you, the food, like I said, man, we had the first three courses, sweetbreads, which tartare of lamb, outstanding, a little bit of a squab next, and with foie gras, one of my favorite things in life. Pork belly with a fried egg, fantastic. Drunken prunes, a really outstanding combination there. And then that Côte de Boeuf, man, was fantastic. Cooked perfectly with Béarnaise sauce on it and a kind of a red wine reduction sauce, or I don't know what the other sauce was, but it was fantastic. And then the smoked mashed potatoes, just a little bit much for the older wines. They went really nicely with the first two wines that still had some of that oak, a lot of oak on the nose and on the palate. And then the roasted Mission fig tart, fantastic with the sauternes. An excellent night. Thank you for those of you that came out. That's what we had to drink with the folks from Chateau Margaux. I'm your host, Andrew Lampasoni, signing off for the Wine Watch, saying remember, always drink the good stuff first.